Before we dive into this mind-blowing event, do not forget to subscribe and like our channel for more exciting experiences. The gentle hum of the city echoed beneath the golden dome of the presidential residence. Toby sat in the nursery, his gaze fixed on the soft, rhythmic rise and fall of his newborn son's chest. His fingers lightly brushed the baby's tiny hand, his heart aching with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Today should have been the happiest day of his life, but the absence of Elizabeth, his beloved wife, cast a shadow over his every breath. Elizabeth had been everything to Toby, his sanctuary in a world filled with turbulence, the light in his darkest moments. Now, she was gone. She had passed away during childbirth, leaving him to face the world alone with their son. Yet, in the midst of his grief, he found solace in the fact that his child had survived, a symbol of hope and continuity. But as he stared at the baby, he couldn't help but remember the twists and turns that had led him here. It had been a long journey, one filled with pain, rejection, and ultimately, the healing power of love. And it all started many years ago, with a love he thought he had lost forever. Toby's childhood had been one of hardship and sacrifice. Raised in a poor neighborhood, he had always felt the weight of being an outsider. His family barely scraped by, but he never let go of his dreams. Even as a young boy, he had an unshakable belief that his future held something greater. In school, Toby was known for his intelligence and determination. But it wasn't just his academic prowess that caught the attention of others. It was his relentless drive. He had an unwavering belief that he was destined for greatness, despite the obstacles that stood in his way. Then came Amara. She was everything he had ever dreamed of: beautiful, kind, and, most importantly, someone who believed in him. They had grown close during their teenage years, their connection growing deeper with each passing day. For Toby, Amara represented everything he longed for: love, acceptance, and the possibility of a future that transcended his circumstances. But that future was shattered when Amara's family rejected him. Her father, a wealthy and influential businessman, had made it clear that Toby was not good enough for his daughter. A man with no money, no status, no connections, he had said, his voice cold and dismissive. You can never give her the life she deserves. Amara had said nothing in Toby's defense. Her silence stung more than her father's harsh words. She had chosen her family over him, and that choice had haunted Toby for years. Heartbroken and disillusioned, Toby left everything behind. He knew that if he was ever going to make something of himself, he had to forge his own path. He poured his energy into his education and career, vowing to prove to the world and to Amara that he was worthy of success. Over the years, Toby's determination paid off. He rose through the ranks of politics, becoming a symbol of hope for the nation's poor and disenfranchised. His rise was meteoric, and soon he became a powerful figure in his country. Yet, despite his success, he couldn't shake the pain of his past. The rejection by Amara, the loss of the love he had once held dear, lingered in his heart. But then, fate intervened. Toby met Elizabeth. She was everything he had never expected, yet everything he needed. The daughter of a prominent African president, Elizabeth was strong, intelligent, and unapologetically independent. She wasn't swayed by Toby's past or his reputation. Instead, she saw him for who he truly was: a man of integrity, a man of vision. Their first meeting had been electric. Toby had spoken candidly about his past, about the pain he had endured, about Amara. He had expected Elizabeth to pity him, to see him as damaged goods. But instead, she had listened, truly listened, without judgment. "I see the man you become," she had said, her eyes soft with understanding. "You are enough, Toby, and I will stand by you." Those words had been the turning point for Toby. For the first time in years, he felt seen, truly seen, for who he was, not for his past, not for the mistakes he had made, but for the man he had become. 2 years later, Toby and Elizabeth were married in a grand ceremony that captivated the entire nation. The people rejoiced, not just because their president had found happiness, but because Toby represented a beacon of hope. He had risen from the ashes of rejection and failure to become the leader of the country. His journey, though marked by hardship, was a testament to the power of perseverance. But for Toby, the wedding wasn't just a celebration of love. It was a moment of healing. He had finally let go of the pain of his past, the memories of Amara's rejection, and had embraced the love that Elizabeth offered him. Together, they were unstoppable, a dynamic duo poised to lead the country into a brighter future. As Toby and Elizabeth celebrated their new life, Amara's world crumbled. She had spent years wondering what might have been, regretting the decision that had torn her apart. Her own marriage had failed, and she found herself looking back at the life she could have had with Toby. The news of his wedding had been the final blow. "I lost him," Amara whispered to herself, clutching the same photograph of Toby that she had kept all these years. The tears fell freely as she remembered the days when their love had been pure and untainted. Despite her regrets, Amara couldn't bring herself to reach out to Toby. She had made her choice, and she couldn't undo the damage. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A year after Toby's wedding, disaster struck. A commercial flight, carrying over 100 passengers, crashed just outside the capital. The nation was in shock, and the president immediately called for a national day of mourning. Among the victims were Amara's parents. Toby, deeply moved by the tragedy, decided to personally reach out to the families of the victims. He invited them to the presidential residence to offer his condolences and support. When Amara arrived, Toby was taken aback. She had aged in the years since he last saw her, but the pain in her eyes was still the same. She had lost so much, and in that moment, Toby knew what he had to do. He approached her slowly, his heart conflicted with emotion. He wanted to turn away, to ignore her as she had once ignored him. But Elizabeth's hand on his arm stopped him. "Toby, she needs you," Elizabeth whispered. "You need to do this, for both of you." Taking a deep breath, Toby walked over to Amara. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, his voice heavy with empathy. Amara looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Toby. I never thought I'd see you again." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The years of hurt and disappointment hung between them like a cloud. But Toby, moved by the rawness of the moment, reached out and took her hand. "You don't have to face this alone." Elizabeth, ever the compassionate soul, made the effort to connect with Amara. She invited her to the presidential residence frequently, and even arranged for her to join the administration as an advisor. Amara's appointment as an advisor was not only a professional opportunity, it was Elizabeth's way of offering Amara a chance at redemption, a way to heal the wounds that had been caused so many years ago. Amara, though hesitant at first, gradually found comfort in this new role. As she spent time with Elizabeth and Toby, she began to realize that forgiveness was not only about mending the past, it was about finding peace with oneself. When Elizabeth became pregnant, the couple was overjoyed. It was a new chapter in their lives, a symbol of the love they shared and the future they were building together. The country, too, celebrated the news. For the first time in years, the nation had a first lady, someone to stand beside Toby, to help shape the future of the country. But the day of delivery turned into a nightmare. Elizabeth faced severe complications during childbirth. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she tragically passed away, leaving Toby to face life alone once again. In the days that followed, Toby struggled to come to terms with his loss. His son, though a beacon of hope, was fragile and needed a blood transfusion to survive. Amara, despite the years of silence between them, couldn't stand to see Toby suffer. She secretly arranged to donate blood to save the baby's life, knowing that her blood type was a match. The transfusion was a success, and Toby's son survived. When Toby learned of Amara's involvement, he was overcome with emotion. He invited her to his office, tears in his eyes, and thanked her for saving their son's life. As the months passed, Toby and Amara grew closer. The bond that they once shared had been rekindled, and they found themselves drawn to one another in a way they hadn't been in years. The love that had once been lost was now found again, but this time it was different. A year after Elizabeth's death, Toby asked Amara to marry him. This time, it was a choice made with the understanding that love, forgiveness, and second chances could heal even the deepest wounds. Amara embraced her new role as stepmother to Toby's son, and together, they built a new life. Toby had finally found peace, knowing that the love he had lost had been restored, and that his son would grow up in a home filled with love, compassion, and hope. As Toby stood on the balcony, watching his son play in the garden, he reflected on his journey. His rise from poverty to power, his heartbreak, his losses, and his triumphs, all of it had led him to this moment. The love of his life had come back to him, and together, they would face whatever the future held. Life is unpredictable, he whispered, his heart full. But love is the one thing that never fades. It's the one thing that always brings us home. And with that, Toby looked forward to the future, a future that was brighter than ever before.